Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, channel demonetized. If you want to give, you can give through the link in the description box. There's a super chat alternative. So let's have some fun with Cory Booker, the man who would never be president of the United States, who has aspirations to run as president of the United States. I tend to call him a chubby superhero because he's been running and saving people, and yet he's completely in the pocket of certain sources. Cory Booker has fell into a bit of a row, and the row, to some degree, depends on the perspective that you're taking in this particular disposition. I call Cory Booker an honorary Zionist. I say that because he's not Jewish. By the same token, he might as well be Jewish because he's in the pocket of that particular lobby. He's in that pocket so much so that when Obama was pushing for the Iranian bill, essentially the JCPOA, the Iranian nuclear deal, the Democrats, for the most part, had backed up Obama on this deal. You had some who were somewhat against it. If you remember, Netanyahu comes to the United States, and they allow Netanyahu to do this speech in the well of Congress. And the Republican Party, in one of the most treasonous displays that I've ever seen, give this rousing applause. A foreign leader. Guess who else was sitting in the audience as Netanyahu bashed Obama in a deal that his president was pushing out? One Cory Booker. Cory Booker was sitting in the audience as a foreign leader bashed his president, the president of his party, bashed that leader and the policy decision of that particular leader. That should give you this idea on Cory Booker's tenor and disposition towards Israel. And just so we put a fine point on it, this is alternate, talking about Cory Booker's allegiance to not just the Zionist movement per se, but the most right-wing elements of the Israeli lobby. Meet Cory Booker's top donor, a right-wing Islamophobic pro-Israel outfit that backs Trump extremist agenda. I'm not going to read all of this. There's one section that I want to read. Yet away from the spotlight, Booker has cultivated a close relationship with the group that has closely aligned Sessions and his bigoted politics, NORPAC, a Republican pro-Israel gun group that pushed nakedly Islamophobic agenda in the United States while supporting Trump's extremist nominee for the United States ambassador to Israel, David Friedman. NORPAC's agenda is well to the right of AIPAC, the main arm of the Israeli lobby. In fact, the group gives Booker more than twice the amount of money he receives from Goldman Sachs, $158,871 in a single campaign cycle. NORPAC is run by Ben Choik, a New Jersey doctor who endorsed Ted Cruz for the president in the Republican primary and insinuated that Congressman Keith Ellison is unfit to be chair of the Democratic National Committee based on the fact that he receives donations from the Council of American Islamic Relations, the largest Muslim civil rights group in America. Think about that. You're not fit to be in charge of that, not because of anything you did, more so because you're being backed by an Islamic group. Ooh. Think about if the words were changed. If, oh, you're not fit because you were being backed by a Jewish group, oh, heads would explode. But this is what you have. Despite knowing he cannot get Cory Booker to take right-wing stances on every issue, Choik has discovered he can get Booker to take right-wing stances on Israel by ensuring he gives money to Booker, more money to Booker than anyone else. Haim Saban took a similar approach in donating to Hillary Clinton, stating, if I'm not number one in donations to Clinton, I'm going to cut my balls off. This is called being bought. Your politicians are bought. While AIPAC remains silent on Donald Trump's recent nomination of Friedman as U.S. ambassador to Israel, NORPAC congratulated Friedman, calling him an accomplished attorney and stating that he has earned the trust and respect of the Israeli people, a point which will enable him to best fulfill his duties representing the United States' interests in Israel. All right, let's skip now. As a result of the far-right pro-Israel group giving more money to Booker than anybody else, Booker has been incentivized to stand by the state of Israel over the interests of his own party and constituents. As President Obama and the Democratic Party pushed for the Iran deal in 2015, Republican Speaker of the House John Boehner invited Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to come and speak in opposition to the Iran deal, while nearly 60 Democrats, including Vice President Joe Biden, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, and Keith Ellison, skipped the speech. Cory Booker took the NORPAC line, appearing in the audience as a foreign nation bashed the president and leader of his own party before a joint session of Congress. Booker did no difference in the aftermath of the UN Resolution 2334, which condemned Israel's settlement building in the West Bank, releasing a one-paragraph statement. The UN Resolution 2334 was a one-sided effort targeting the state of Israel that set back efforts to move us closer to a two-state solution and peace. That's why I spoke out against the resolution before the Security Council vote in December. Our legislative effort makes it clear that the United States-Israeli partnership is unbreakable, and the UN is an inappropriate venue to impose restrictions on the peace process, and Congress will act to protect direct negotiations that will move us closer to a two-state solution. A political poll published in the aftermath of the resolution found that once again Booker record aligned far better with his donors than with the opinions of his party and his base. They gave Booker money, and Booker danced and shake for the money that was put in his G-string. Now, this person who is so firmly bought by this particular Israeli lobby was caught holding the sign. From Palestine to Mexico, all walls have to go. He's standing there so uneasy. Oh God, if I tell these people that I can't hold this sign, they're going to feel some way about me. And the way they're going to feel about me is the way they should feel about me. So God, I'm going to hold this sign, repudiating everything that I am. And they're going to take my Zionist card once they see me with the sign. Now, here's the catch. Depending on who you were, this was what do you call it? A controversy. Depending on who you were. I look at this and say, great. Cory Booker's base looks at this and says, great. All of these smiling people here look at this and say, great. But remember, Cory Booker is bought by a rabid, right-wing, pro-Israel group that's to the right of AIPAC. And Cory Booker holding this sign after being paid so fantastically great by this group that's pro-Israel, far to the right. You can imagine they're going to take issue with, wait a minute, we're giving you money not to hold signs like that. You need to explain why you're holding the sign. That sign says there's some kind of advocacy for Palestine. Now, Cory Booker saying that he wants a two-state solution, as at this point is utter nonsense. This is what Palestine was. And then it was this in 1947. And then it was this. Notice something. More and more land is being stolen, breaking international law. And during the quote-unquote peace deal, it's breaking the law. The country that is supposed to be running through the peace deal, in Cory Booker's mind anyway, is supposed to be the United States. That country that is supposed to also be integral in the peace deal is giving weapons and materials. One country that's supposed to be part of the peace deal, meaning one of the parties, has nuclear weapons. Nobody says anything about that, but everybody knows it. When one party that was supposed to be part of the peace deal or in the negotiation was murdering the other party to the tune of 2,000 people, 80% of which were civilians. You have another situation where they're being held in an open-air ghetto. And at this point, all notion that Israel is not an apartheid state should have faded away. They call themselves a Jewish state. They have people there that are second-class citizens under that Jewish state. And you've seen at this point that the land has, for all intents and purposes, been appropriated by Israel. Stolen. They have a military occupation where they're taking the land. Now, I look at this sign and say this is a tepid sign. The fanatics that Cory Booker are paid by look at this sign and flip out. What do you mean you're saying anything positive about Palestine? Yes, we've stolen all of their land. Yes, they're in open air ghetto. Yes, they're in little pens where they barely have water and we can bomb them and so forth, and the rest of the international community doesn't do anything because the United States backs them up. Meaning, if Israel goes on a bombing raid, the U.S. backs them up. If the United Nations says anything about it, the United States essentially backs Israel up. Israel is in a situation where they can steal as much land as they want, as you can say they have, because the United States continuously backs them up. If Cory Booker is talking about a two-state solution, what the hell is Cory Booker talking about? Ultimately, what Cory Booker is talking about is just a fig leaf to allow Israel to steal and appropriate the rest of the land. What happens to the Palestinians? Cory Booker doesn't care one iota. Him holding on to this sign is only a big deal to the people who pay him, who've bought him. His supporters look at the sign and it makes all the sense in the world. The real row here, is that there will be any conflict or any controversy in a politician holding the sign, especially when his constituents, his real constituents, the people who go out and vote for him, are okay with this sign. It's the minority that's not. What did Cory Booker say to explain himself for this? Because after all, there will be people, of course, who are going to flip out. His buyers, the people who are affiliated with his buyers, or the people who have this kind of political disposition. What are you doing holding that sign? Why are you holding that sign, giving any accolades to the Palestinian plight? I mean, after all, we've been killing and murdering and throwing them in prison. We've been killing their kids, gassing babies in some points. Why are you holding that sign reminding us and other human beings that the country that is being occupied and the land that's being appropriated belong to somebody else? Why are you holding that sign? Let's see what Cory Booker says. Let's hear Cory Booker's excuse. New Jersey Senator Cory Booker is under fire for posing for a photo with anti-Israeli activists. Look at this. It's not anti-Israel to be pro-Palestinian. There's a difference in those things. There's a difference in those things. You can be both. The problem here is that Israel wants it all. And the United States and this quote-unquote peace process is the fig leaf that they're using to take it. Cory Booker is one of the people who are assisting in the appropriation of this land. I keep saying he's an honorary Zionist. I say it for a reason. But you can be pro-Palestinian and not anti-Israel. There's a difference in those things. I want to hear his excuse. A grinning Cory Booker held up a sign critical of Israel's security wall at the Netroots Nation conference in New Orleans Friday, flanked by members of the United States campaign for Palestinian rights. From Palestinian to Mexico, all walls have to go, the sign read. But it wasn't Booker's fault, spokesman Jeff Gitz insisted. Booker didn't do anything wrong. No, Booker didn't do anything wrong. But in this case, under this model of thought, Booker did do something wrong. But they need to explain themselves to the people who are paying Booker. Why are you holding that sign, Booker? We give you good money not to hold signs like that. Why are you holding that sign? Spokesman Jeff Gitz insisted he didn't have time to read the sign. Get off his back. He couldn't read the sign. He didn't know. He couldn't see it. Gitz told the Jewish Telegraphic Agency from his cursory glance, he thought he was talking about Mexico. And he didn't realize it had anything to do with Israel. I would have slapped the shit out that kid if he gave me that sign and I saw Israel on it. I didn't know. I just saw Mexico. And I don't like those goddamn Mexican walls. But the Palestinian walls, yes, I'm okay with it. Because after all, we need to let the peace process play itself out. Just let it play itself out. Gaetz did not explain how Booker missed the pro-Palestinian message on the t-shirt worn by the woman he is seen embracing in the photo. Palestine, a feminist, queer, refugee, racial justice. I guess he didn't see that either. So Booker's excuse: I didn't see Palestine on the sign. I didn't see Palestine on the woman who I was hugging. I didn't see Palestine anywhere. I just saw Mexico. Don't hit me. And please keep giving me money. I didn't see it, I promise. Conservative actor James Woods was one of the critics who pounced on Booker's gaffe. The gaffe is thinking that it's a gaffe. I am sick of these weak politicians who's not willing to stand up for Palestinian rights. Whether that's Ocasio-Cortez or whether that's the bought, chubby superhero himself, Cory Booker. I have no expectation of Cory Booker standing up for these rights. I suspect that Cory Booker in the moment didn't want to tell these people no, and when this picture came out, he needed to come up with an explanation of why he didn't want to slap one of the kids with the sign or the poster, or the t-shirt. But Cory Booker, a gaffe. Just think about that. You have an occupying military force, and it's a gaffe to call it an occupying military force. It's a gaffe to say you want to represent other human beings that are in that part of the world that are under occupation, that are being killed, that are being deprived of access to the things that they need. That's somehow the negative. Standing up for that is the negative. I would suggest that if you're in a position where standing up for Palestinians is the gaffe, you're on the wrong side of history. I suggest to Cory Booker he is on the wrong side of history. But I strongly suspect that the bed of money that he lays on makes up for that being on the wrong side of history. So I'm going to end this here. I'm not going to keep this one long, but I love this one of Cory Booker having to explain why representing the interests of the Palestinians, or at the very least trying to fight for human dignity and human rights, is somehow a negative. And that within the context of all the money that he gets from his friends on the Jewish lobby. Let's call it Israeli lobby. But same difference. I'm going to end this here. All right, guys. If you enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through Patreon. Look, we need to get to the point where these people are representing us, not their lobbyists or the people who dump a bunch of money in their pockets. The indignity of a politician who's supposed to be in a particular party sitting there as the leader of that party is bashed by a foreign government. Cory Booker for you. Cory Booker. Money greases the wheels like nobody's business. All right, I'm going to end this. Dark Roast Lefty. Hey, there's a New York Post article attacking Ocasio-Cortez. I'll check this out. Stephen Carl, thanks for all your work. Well, it's my job at this point, Stephen. Cory Booker is basically a 3D mashup of identity politics and a bumper sticker slogans. Look, I don't know why anybody would give Cory Booker the time of day after that performance right there by itself. The moment that you know there's a hard right winger that's to the right of AIPAC, who's already ridiculously to the right, who has interests that is not our country's interests. That's the key point. What is good for Israel is not necessarily good for the United States. And if the person who you're putting in that office is taking positions and dispositions that seem to be for the benefit of Israel and not for the country, there's a problem with that. There's a problem with that. That person's name is Cory Booker. That person would never see the presidency, nor should that person ever see the presidency. And in this case, you have a politician who is so weak, so utterly and incomprehensibly weak, that this is considered a gaffe. And he to explain why holding a sign that has in any way, in the most tepid way, a pro-Palestinian sign is somehow a gaffe, that he needs to somehow explain and backtrack, using the ridiculous answer of, I couldn't see the woman's shirt had Palestinian on it in big, bold, white letters. Nor could I see the sign where the very first line it says from Palestine. I didn't see any of that. I just saw Mexico. Sure, Booker. Sure.